Hi, Aman. There's no prize for being the first person. Maybe next time. Welcome, everyone, to our first art and storytelling session to celebrate South Asian Heritage Month UK. And it's the first time we're celebrating South Asian Heritage Month in the UK, so it's a really, really special time. It is being celebrated on various other platforms. I do want to make a mention of that. Anita Rani, Benita Kane, and Jasveer Singh of City Seeks, they actually they've initiated South Asian Heritage Month, and the idea was, and my sister and I, we wanted to put the spotlight on artists that we admire. And when I say artists, I mean creators from various fields. They may not get that opportunity through this very large platform that Benita Kane, Anita Rani, and Jasveer Singh have organised. So by no means are we taking away from them, their efforts. We very much appreciate what they're doing, but this is just our way of, like I said, celebrating and putting the spotlight on those people we've admired, who we feel are contributing to South Asian heritage in a really responsible and meaningful way. And of course, there's so many that we wanted to include, but there's only 1 month, and obviously not enough days to include everybody. So my apologies for not being able to feature everyone this year, but hopefully next year we can celebrate more South Asians doing great things. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes. Baljinder's husband is asking who'd like to comment fun facts about Baljinder every 10 minutes. Unfortunately, I will be disabling the comments until the end. I think we'll give 15-20 minutes right at the end for questions and comments, just so we can have a conversation, unfiltered conversation. Maybe next time we can do that. But I'll give it a few more minutes for other people to join in. But in the meantime, if you want to grab something to drink, then you have some time to do that. Just check the time. 1 more minute I'll give. What I'll do is, just so you're aware of the format, I will introduce Baljinder Kaur, who we all love. And it's such a real honour to have her here in conversation with us. I say us, it's just me, my sister isn't well. But nonetheless, to have Baljinder share her time, she has actually been really wonderful in sharing her journey with us before on our blog, but that was in a written format. We sent her questions and she answered them. This is a little bit different and probably nerve-wracking for her. So I hope you can all make her comfortable. You will have an opportunity for questions at the end, so please hold on to them and we'll try and get through as many as possible. So let's start with an introduction, and then I'll invite Baljinder. So what I'm normally doing is just doing a little bio on all the artists that we're featuring, and because this is art and storytelling, I thought it would be nice to share Baljinder's bio through a little story that I've written. So here goes. This is the story of Baljinder Kaur, an illustrator and storyteller who lives in the culturally colourful town in the United Kingdom known as Wolverhampton. Baljinder is fascinated by the seemingly ordinary happenings of day-to-day life, and it is from this that she draws her inspiration, literally and figuratively. You see, what may be common and mundane for the rest of us is in fact extraordinary and enthralling for Baljinder, because she sees the world from the mind's eye of a child, which is why her artwork has a gentle and heartfelt innocence about it. Through her vivid imagination, she is able to create magical universes which are whimsical wonderlands of spirituality. Baljinder is a Sikh, and she explores her identity and faith through her amusing and playful illustrations of turbaned men with long flowy beards and fantasy creatures singing the song of the divine in enchanting woodlands. She also explores themes of identity, spirituality, nature, and transcendence. Most of her spiritually driven illustrations are often depicted with a luminescent mysticism. It makes me wonder how my experience of Sikhi would have been as a young girl if I had access to Baljinder's images and stories. Over the years, Baljinder has developed a passion for children's picture books, in particular as a platform for exploring and expressing ideas around the South Asian diaspora. Her sketches of elders walking on the street, grandparents reading to children, and the tale of Bibs, short for Bibi, evoke emotions of nostalgia for one's own grandparents. It is one of the reasons I gravitated towards Baljinder's artwork in the first instance. I have no grandparents of my own, and I like to imagine my grandparents in Baljinder's delightful sketches. So join me in giving a warm welcome to Baljinder Kaur as we spend the next hour delving into her fantastical mind and world of spiritual wonder. So I am going to invite Baljinder and then disable the comments. Showtime.
Oh my, that was such a lovely story.
I'm glad you approve of it. If the storyteller approves, then what can I say? I can only be grateful. Hi Baljinder, thank you for joining us. So grateful. Just turned off the comments so we can have a unfiltered conversation. But I've told everybody that at the end they'll have an opportunity for questions. How are you? Are you okay?
Good. Yeah. A bit nervous, but I've got some waters.
Don't worry. Everyone here is a fan of you, so you got nothing to worry about. They're all here for you. So let's start.
I'm worried about my husband coming in and doing something like a prank.
He's already said that he's going to drop, well, he was going to drop facts about you every 10 minutes,
Yeah.
but I've disabled comments now. Something that we're doing for all the artists, just like I said, it allows us to have a really intimate, casual conversation and we're not distracted by the comments. So sorry about that. But what I'll do, Baljinder, just to break the ice, some rapid fire round questions. And for those that don't know you, I don't know where you've been, but these questions will allow us to get more familiar with Baljinder, the person, as opposed to Baljinder, the illustrator. So there's no right or wrong. These are your answers. Don't feel the pressure about it. Okay, and remember it's rapid fire round, so if you can keep the answers short. Your most memorable storybook from your childhood for its visuals?
There's this book called Fast Frog, and I remember it because he can't sleep, and then his friends tell him it's because you didn't close your eyelids, and that's really memorable to me.
I've not heard of that one. I might have to check that out. Memorable children's book for its story or message?
Enid Blyton's The Wishing Chair, and mostly because it took you to all these fantastical lands, and it was just beautiful. I love that. Yeah,
I love Enid Blyton. Most of her books, actually. There was one that she had, which was I think Mr. Twiddle or something like that. I don't know if you know of this one. And it was a guy that was always making mistakes. It's a really funny little book. And one of the stories, his wife asks him to get some bulbs, and she means bulbs as in light bulbs, and he goes and gets flower bulbs. So it's just how he's a silly little man. But that's, the epitome of Enid Blyton sort of books, really enchanting, which is what your books are like, but we'll get onto that in a moment. The first illustration that you ever made?
I don't think I remember which one I first made, but the most memorable is probably, there's this image of, and this is probably when I was getting into Sikhi, and that's why I remember it so much, is there's an image of a Singh from the back, and his arms are outstretched, and they're kind of merging into the landscape around him, and it was just this idea of oneness that I was exploring, so I remember that the most, I think.
How old were you when you did that?
Oh, I was quite old. I was probably about 14, 15, yeah. So it was.
And that was your first illustration?
I wouldn't say it's my first, it's my most memorable. I don't think I remember my first, yeah.
Fair enough. Your favorite children's illustrator?
That's a really difficult one because I don't have one. I actually don't have one. There's so many people I admire, and I kind of love the work of so many people for so many different reasons. But I will share one that I came across recently, and I don't want to say her name wrong, but I'll try my best. And I think it's Mihir Dorkat Amini. I think that's her name. But she's done like these beautiful books exploring Islam in a really kind of just a really gorgeous way. And she did one recently, is exploring kind of geometry and the nuances in different kind of cultures across Islam, and it's really gorgeous.
Is that's a children's book, yeah?
Yeah, I've got it here actually. It's children's book.
Wow.
It's really gorgeous, really gorgeous.
That is really beautiful. That is really beautiful. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
A children's book that you would like to lend your artistic skill to. It can be an existing book or one that's yet to be created.
So I'm actually working on one at the moment, which I announced earlier today, and it's Gomez Gaze. And yay!
Congratulations!
Yeah.
That was with Saffron Press, right?
Saffron Press, yeah. Saffron Press are an amazing publishers because they're an independent press, and I think what I really respect about them is that it's values first and not profit first, because for most publishers it will be, it's driven by sales and what is marketable and what people are going to buy and fashion, etc. What's fashionable at the time, what topic is fashionable at the time. So the fact that they're driven by values, and the fact that you don't feel as if you have to, they value an authentic voice. You don't feel like you have to be palatable in any way to anyone else. I think that's really important. So publishers like Saffron Press and Mighty Khalsa, it's really important to have. But I'm really excited about Gomez Gaze.
We're all excited for you. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail after these sort of questions, because I know you announced it earlier, and the book is something that's just been a long time coming, and my sister and I, we're fans of Saffron Press as well. So when I saw that, I thought, how amazing. I'm glad you dropped that answer here, actually. That worked out really nicely. An artist, either living or dead, who you'd like to shadow for the day?
So there's this one guy, he's actually a Korean artist, and I think his name is Kim Jung, if I said it the right way. But I saw a video of him on YouTube, and the amazing thing about him is he can draw completely from like the visual library of his mind, and he doesn't ever use any references at all. But there's this one line where he goes, like everyone's asking him, you draw for like 10 hours straight a day and you only take breaks when you need to pee or eat or sleep, and don't you ever get tired? And he says, no, because drawing is like breathing for me. And I was like, wow, I wish drawing would be breathing for me. And just how dedicated he is to his practice.
That reminds me of, now you probably know, it's the guys that do the anime for Studio Ghibli.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a guy quite similar to that. I don't remember his name, but they interviewed him, and he basically just doesn't move from his seat, and he doesn't feel the need to, because that is his meditation. What you just said about this Korean artist. Okay, great. You are having a dinner party. Which 3 people would you like to invite? They don't have to be artists, just anyone that inspires you and you just want to have this conversation with them. Who would those 3 people be?
Can I invite Guru Nanak Dev Ji 3 times? But I think the thing is, I think I would really struggle for conversation. I wouldn't know what to say, but I would just really enjoy preparing a meal. I think I would enjoy doing that, just preparing a meal for them and being able to like serve some food. I think that would be amazing. But I wouldn't know what to talk about. I'd just sit quiet.
You know what? Can we all join this table? Can we all join this table with Guru Nanak? I think if I was at a table like that, I'd just listen. I'd just just listen and absorb your energy, your wisdom. I think that's the best answer, really. Biased, but yes, best answer. And what would the storybook of your life be called?
The Journey Home.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that, Journey Home. There's so much about that can be said. If we have time, we'll go into it, but let's start the conversation. Let's start understanding Baljinder's brilliant mind. So Baljinder, there's gonna be a lot of that. There's gonna be a lot of that throughout this. All right. So
because it's South Asian Heritage Month, a lot of the questions are oriented towards that and trying to understand someone, who's a person of color, how you got into the sort of creative realm, how was that met by your family, friends, community? So there'll be a lot of emphasis on that. We'll start with what was the turning point for you where you decided that you were going to pursue children's illustration, particularly Sikh and Punjabi diasporic stories? So you mentioned that the first illustration you drew was when you were 14, and it was the idea of oneness. So was that the turning point, or was there something later? Was it something you read, or did you just realize there's a void and that you wanted to fill that?
I think there were several turning points. I mean, the one that you mentioned, I think that was probably the general realization that drawing and painting and making things helps me to work through things. It helps me to understand. So that was probably one of the turning points. But I think the main turning point, which I've probably shared before as well, is always pinpointed to this one night when my nieces stayed over for a sleepover. And I think at that point I was studying graphic design illustration, so I was already, getting into it. But when they stayed over, I really wanted to bring out a book that resonated with, our experiences in some way. And the only thing I could find was Guru Nanak bedtime stories. And I got that out, and already I saw them yawning, and they were like, "Oh, Marcy, I don't like this."
I think most of us today, it's that blue book with a black and white photograph of Guru Nanak. Yes.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think most of us had bedtime stories for Guru Nanak. I think that was the only children's book of that time, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if there's anything else.
I spoke to my husband about this, and he said his mom read the same stories. Quite a few people I spoke to, they know that book, and I think at that time, our parents and that generation, they did not have the resources nor the time to think about the sort of the creative pursuits, because they've been uprooted and they've come here to and establish themselves. So as much as that was, black and white cover, Soba Singh photo of Guru Nanak, they did the best with what they had around them. And now people like you, they have the opportunity to explore so many different avenues of creativity, and we'll touch on that later on, actually. But when you read that book to your nieces and nephews, how did they respond to it?
They just found it very difficult to connect. I think they couldn't resonate with the text, and they couldn't process the visual language either of the illustrations, and that's really an important part of it, because they're so used to seeing a very different type of visual language around them. Like, it's very different, it's very colourful, and there's a lot of other things going on, and they just couldn't process it, and they didn't want to. I had to read them a different book, so we didn't read that. But at that moment, I think that's when the realization really hit that, okay, there is a huge gap and we need stuff. So it was important.
So then that leads on to my next question about your style. So what inspired your particular style? Because I think it's quite distinct, and if I saw one of your images in a museum without your name on it, and I think most of us would agree, we would know that's Baljinder Kaur. We'd know. I think you have a distinctive style. So how did where did that inspiration come from?
It's interesting because I feel the exact opposite. I feel I have maybe a visual, I wouldn't use the word style, but I have a visual language that is probably emerging gradually. But I don't feel completely comfortable in it yet. I think it's evolving, and I think it's going to continue to evolve. And that's one of the reasons that I started doing my master's in children's book illustration, because I wanted to really kind of hone in on it and really feel more comfortable in it. But I do remember some of my tutors saying as well that I think the illustrator or the artist will never really see their work in that way anyway. I think other people will be able to kind of project and make out things. For instance, when we look at the sketchbooks of our peers, I know that I can point out whose belongs to who, like even if we've drawn the same scene, I can tell the way they've put a mark on a page and stuff. It's very, it somehow reflects their personality in some way, and you can just tell. But I don't think you can always see it in yourself, so maybe that's why.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people when I'm scrolling on Instagram, for example, I'm not on your page, but on the feed it'll come up, and I'll know instantly, oh, that's one of your new pieces. So yeah, interesting that you don't see that, but art is ever evolving, isn't it? So um, yeah, it's just a process. Okay, so you released a book earlier this year, I think, with Mighty Khalsa, Guru Nanak the Magnificent, which I bought for my niece. I don't have it here. I would love to have just shown it. If I'm sure you have it.
I've got it there.
You have it?
Got a
Of course
copy.
you have it. Um,
Yeah.
so this book, yeah, was released earlier this year with Mighty Khalsa, and it's not just a storybook for Sikh children, because it encompasses the values of the gurus, which are universal wisdom, right? So it's not just designed for Sikh children. But for those that don't know about this book or haven't read it, if you can just give an insight what this book is about, and your design process in providing visual aids for these virtue-led stories.
Yeah. So Guru Nanak Magnificent actually came out last year.
Okay.
But it's I would say it's like a poetic visual of the life of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, but it, you know, not going into anything too specific, but more of a kind of an essence, a general essence of them. In terms of process, it's been such a long one. I've got the initial one that I started with. So I actually started this as a project at uni in the last year of my uni. It was one of my final projects I did, and this was what it looked like originally, and it's come a long way. It's Nanak the Magnificent. Sorry, it's got a bit of a stain on it. But so I worked on this originally, and I'll show you some of the pages actually. So with this, I was experimenting a lot at the time. So I made these faces out of plasticine, and then I photographed them, and I worked in mixed media. So you might recognize this page of, this was Mardana plays the Rabab and Nanak began to sing, transforming thieves and beggars into beautiful saints and kings. So yeah, so that was the original one that I did, and after I finished uni, I knew that I wanted to continue with it and actually have it as a published book. But in my head, I was, you know, when you have like a huge skill gap, like you have this idea, and you have this vague idea of how you want it to be and how you want it to feel, but you know that your skills are like, it would be this way actually, skills are here and where you want to be is like there. So you've got this huge gap to fill, and this project basically became a skill gap project, and also like a lifeline project, because it was all I was thinking about. And it's 2018 is when I actually finished working on it, from 2013, from when it was like conceptualized. And I'll show you some of like, you know, what I went through.
Yeah.
It was because, so this is, so I'll show you some of this. So one of the pages is the Mother Earth page that you might remember. So a lot of the time it was just doing things again and again, like all of these.
I remember that.
A more generalized version of Mother Earth. This was like a printmaking version of Mother Earth. Another painterly one, another one, and then trying the like teardrops in different ways. I have so many of these, but I'm just going to pull a few of them out. And then that, and then what it finally actually came to was this. So it was a lot of doing it and then leaving it for a few months and thinking, okay, I can't do it, and then working on sketchbooks, working on my skills, and then coming back to it. And that was the finished image that we actually came to, but it was going through all of that, you know. And there's this page here where it says, before the stars began to sing, and then I went through this process of, okay, will the stars sing? And it was exploring different ideas of, you know, singing stars, of how it would look. So I tried so many different medias and so many different things, and I'll show you when I first started just conceptualizing what Guru Nanak Dev Ji might look like, and it was just drawing the face. Yeah, it was just drawing the face again and again. Yeah, I've got so many of these. This is just one of these.
And his beard is growing, but you know, with each picture, he's aging.
Well, I don't know what order they're in, but there's loads of these. Like, you know, there's very slight differences, but these were really loose, really quick, loose sketches, just to kind of, like, you know, get through. So I have piles and piles of these. So I don't know if I should go on, but I'll show you one of them as well. So.
That, you know what, we're so privileged that you're showing us this, because this is that's why I asked you this question about design process, because, you know, someone like me, you know, I do music,
Yeah.
and anyone in the artistic field, whether you're a writer, painter, musician, you hone your craft over and over and over, and even when it's released out there, you look back on it and think, oh my, I could have done it differently, I could have done it better. And just to see that final product of Mother Earth with the hair, and that journey from, you know, your first inception to the final product, we often don't get to see that as
Yeah.
you know, people admirers of art. So thank you for sharing that. Do you have any more as well?
Yeah, I've got loads. I've got, but I'll share just a few. So this is another like thing you maybe got on like page will be like that, and some of the people in there. But I think one thing about this project, the key thing I really want to say is that it's one of those, you know, like when you're really like, you know, if you're really in love with someone, or if you just really want to flatter someone, and you want to try and be the best person that you can be for that person, and you try your best, and you know, and it was that type of project where I really wanted to try and you know, be to a level where I can manifest what I really want to manifest. But I knew that it was like it's an unattainable goal. Like you're never going to get there because of the nature of the project. You're talking about something that is beyond you. But but when you're like when you are in love with someone and you try and be better with them, better for them, it's actually that person that makes you better in the first place. So it's kind of like as if working through the book, you know, it's been one of those where it develops you naturally. Like Guru Nanak Dev Ji has pushed to develop me naturally. It's been one of those, like an excuse, a happy excuse. But you're right when you say like it will never, you know, even when you look back, you feel like it's not enough. But there has to be a cut-off point, otherwise you'll never get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So profound. So profound how you just described that Guru Nanak pushed you and helped you in that. I think that comes really strongly through your work. You know, I mentioned it in the bio that your faith and your identity, and I think that is what has attracted so many people to your work, because it didn't exist. Like you mentioned, the bedtime stories for Guru Nanak, there was just that one. I think there was Guru Gobind Singh stories, but essentially it was just that black and white photo. And like you said, that's not the language of children, and you've developed that. And I just wanted to show this. And you mentioned something earlier now with the Korean artist, how he said that he doesn't move from the desk because drawing, illustrating is like breathing for him. And the caption on this, I'll read it because you can't see it with the glare. It says, "Tell me what else brings worth to the breath of a musician other than making music." Those were the last words he uttered, and now all he breathes is music, which is the same concept, you know, that when you're imbued in something, you don't see anything but that. And I just want to touch on this. This is obviously Baljinder's illustration. And I don't know if this is Guru Nanak or Mardana, but I think it is. It could be. But I like the fantasy element, like the ears, you know, elfish ears, little dwarf musician, and this halo and nature with the bird. I think these are themes, recurring themes that I've noticed throughout your work. And luminosity, I think, is something I've definitely seen in a lot of your spiritual illustrations. But I'll come to that in a moment. So how do you feel about the idea of introducing Guru Nanak or spiritual figures to children? Do you feel there's a pressure there because you're essentially that's the first image they're engaging with? We, you know, as we were growing up in our generation, we only had Sorbal Singh's painting, the one that, you know, we all know that painting, right? It hangs in most of our walls across the world. So you're introducing it from a very early age. Do you feel that pressure that you, how do you want people to identify with Guru Nanak?
Yeah, I don't really feel a pressure, as to say. I think because it feels like such a personal kind of relationship, it feels like I'm just putting something out there, and if people connect, they connect. It doesn't feel so much like oh, it has to be a certain way or a certain something. You know?
Yeah.
I just feel like if it comes from an authentic place, then that's enough.
Like it's organic for you. You're not sitting there thinking, okay, what's the aim? This is the desired outcome. It's not like that for you.
No, but I definitely felt the pressure afterwards, after I'd done it and it was going to be released. That's when I was really nervous, and I was like, oh, I think I was really worried that I might offend people because Guru Nanak Dev Ji is beloved to everybody. I thought, okay, I might offend people that might not think this is historically accurate or this is cartoonish, because that's sometimes a thing. You know, all of these things. I was worried about that, the critique that would fall back, but then then I just kind of left it, and you can't worry about those things. You're always going to offend
I
someone.
think that's the thing about art. It's open to interpretation, but that leads me into my next question about historic pictorial records. So we know we have historic pictorial records of the gurus, and they're depicted on frescoes in the Gurdwara and in paintings as well. And these old paintings, we see Guru Nanak with the Seli Topi. We see some gurus, Guru Gobind Singh with his hunting dog and the hawk, and some of the gurus are painted with jewelry and with earrings. And then we've got Soba Singh. Soba Singh is famed all around the world for creating that iconic image of Guru Nanak with his hand, hand up, and this old, soft, gentle Guru Nanak. And I just wanted to read a poem which you might be familiar with. And for those that are not, I'll read it. It's in Punjabi, and I'll just translate some of the words in English. It's by a poet called Jaswant Zafar. Have you heard of him, Roger?
Yeah. I heard the poem.
So I wanted to just touch on this idea about interpretation and art, especially with spiritual figureheads. So Jaswant Zafar, for those that don't know, he's a poet, and he did a very famous poem on Guru Nanak, and it's called Nanak the Asli Tasveer, so the real picture of Guru Nanak. And in this poem, he tries to dismantle our notion that Guru Nanak is this soft and gentle man as Soba Singh depicted, right? So I'm just going to look at my laptop because I made some notes.
Okay.
So Guru Nanak, we know he traveled the world for 27 years with by Mardana, and he traveled by foot. But the Soba Singh painting doesn't show that. So just to expand, if what Jaswant Zafar is saying is, if Guru Nanak traveled the world by foot, his heels would have been cracked and hard, his hands and face would have been weathered by the winds, he would have had concaved cheeks showing, his like bone-like structure of his face. He would have had a dry and entangled beard. Jaswant Zafar then goes on to say, but we prefer the cool and calm Nanak with his hand raised like Lakshmi, silky beard, chubby cheeks, soft feet, delicate Barbie hands, and rosy lips. Guru Nanak was a man that refuted hierarchy, monarchy, society, left his family for 27 years. So in today's day and age, a man like Nanak, we might not hold him in high regard because of all these things. The real Nanak, who challenged society and dogmatic beliefs, can prove fatal and dangerous. I'm just going to, before I ask the question now, I'm just going to read the Punjabi poetry. I think is really beautiful. Just not the entire poem, just some parts. So it's called Nanak, and Jaswant Zafar says, Maaf karna, sade lai bahut mushkil hai, Nanak di asli tasveer da dhyan tarna. Pende di toor na lat pat pinjaniyan. So this is the dry, cracked heels. Tirkiyan addiyan. These are some of the words he uses. Akkhan jo parwar nu, sarkar nu, te har sanskar nu tich jandiyan. So he basically refuted all of these like society, monarchy. बहुत खतरनाक सिद्ध हो सकदा है साडे लई असली नानक सानू तां सोभा सिंह दी मूर्ति वाला नानक ही सूट करदा है शांत लीन लक्ष्मी देवी वांग उठाया हाथ चो फुटदी मेहर ते अखां चो डुल डुल पैंदी कोमलता. So these bright and beautiful eyes, as Soba Singh has depicted Guru Nanak. San silky safaf daadi gol matol goriyan gulabi gallan fair and lovely. Surk tipsy haunt, red rosy lips, mulayam jamni pair, soft feet, hule Barbie hath, delicate Barbie doll hands. He says, Sade inna kanadiya kanda te Nanak de Soba Singh chittar hi tek sakde, rahan nu rad karn wale khatarnak Nanak di asli tasveer da par, sadi koi kand nahi chal sakdi. So he's talking about, can our walls carry the weight of this man who basically shunned society. Obviously, he had his reason, and we're so grateful that he did that. But if a man like Nanak existed today, would we hold him in high regard? So my question to you then, as a contemporary artist, because Soba Singh depicted Nanak in the way he wanted, and it doesn't look like the historical records that we have.
Yeah.
So as a contemporary artist that you are, do you feel you have a personal moral responsibility in the way you stylize spiritual figureheads like Guru Nanak? Are your paintings reimagined versions of existing pictorial records or of the Gurus, or are they your own interpretation? Just how, even in this poem, just Savant Zafar, he's interpreted Guru Nanak that way through his poem.
I love his poem. I remember coming across it a few years ago, and it was amazing. That's such a good question as well. I think I will always, or for now at least, I definitely lean towards personal interpretation and personal relationship. I feel like my moral obligation is not so much to connect to the physical form, because I feel like that's it just feels impossible. Feels like an impossible task, because I was never there, and I've not had that vision. But it feels more so to connect to the emotions and the essence, like, you know, the emotional kind of center of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and how it makes you feel, you know. And when we talk about like the meanings of like Gurbani, we talk about the Akhri Arth and the Indri Arth, like, you know, what the kind of what it's saying directly, and then what like the deeper essence of what Gurbani is. And I feel like in the same way, it's kind of, you can talk about this is Guru Nanak Dev Ji, but then it's okay, well, but how does Guru Nanak Dev Ji make you feel? And I think in the context of children's picture books, that's what naturally sits with me, and what I'm really interested in. But I did put a disclaimer at the back of the book to say that as well, because I think, because that's always in the back of my mind, because I feel like I'm not equipped, and I'm not an historian or an academic in that way. I'm an artist, and it'll always be that kind of humble interpretation. So
I like that you said that, because I mean, I love your artwork, and thousands of people love your artwork as well. I asked you that question simply because, you know, we all interpret, you know, art is such a subjective thing, and we have our own interpretation of it. If I give you my example of music, you know, I could listen to a shabad. I'll give you my example, my twin sister. She's going to feel completely different than me. And that's the same shabad, but we're going to view it differently. It's going to hit me differently in a way to her. And that's the beauty of it, that there is not this one hat fits all. I don't think that's what art's supposed to be like.
And I think what I usually I find inspiration, and I know I probably should read and research into more, but you know, in Sri Guru Nanak Prakash, when Kavi Pai Santokh Singh Ji is describing at the beginning the different gurus, and like and they speak in so much reverence about, you know, there's lotus flowers on their feet, and it's so poetic and it's so beautiful. But again, it's the feeling that they evoke that stays with you, and that's the essence of it that really stays with you.
Exactly. And I think also, you know, in Guru Granth Sahib we have so many references to the Sargun and the Nirgun, form and the formless. So it's like you said, it's how does it make you feel ultimately? That is what it's about. It's about touching the heart, I think, whatever artistic medium that might be. So yeah, thanks for your answer on that. And have you faced any challenges, could be personal or from the community, in pursuing creative career, especially as a South Asian?
I think they're definitely all internal challenges. I've been lucky not to have so many external ones. I don't think I've had any external ones actually. Everyone's been supportive. Yeah, but the internal ones for sure. I think one of the main issues has always been self-doubt and self-worth. And I think less so now. I think as the years go on, I get better at managing those things. But at the beginning, probably several years back, I think the main issue has always been that, on one hand, I want to be dedicated to being, you know, good at what I do, and being and constantly developing as an illustrator. But on the other hand, I have to find a way of I don't want to say monetizing that, but being able to make a living from that as well.
Yeah,
and
of course.
To try and be authentic to your practice, and then to make a living from it. A lot of people do it really well, but I don't. I really struggle with that side of it. Like, it's a huge challenge. And I think in the past few years, when I was like, you know, spending a lot more time honing on my skills, and you know, I wasn't yet working on picture books as much, that's when I think it hit my self-worth the most, because I felt like if I'm not making money, then my work has no value, and I have no value as an artist, and that got into my head. And then I found myself finally, I went into all these dark places and then I wrote myself a letter as a reminder, and I put it on my wall, and it was basically, just remembering your self-worth, and that it's not to do anything, it's not to do with what society says it's about, that you make. I've actually got the letter if you want me to read it. So
Yes,
I won't read all of it, but it was
whatever you want to read from it.
I'll read it because it'll be a good reminder to myself as well. So it's actually dated the 21st of December 2017. Dear Bali, the work you do is important, very important. Its value is not measured by if it makes money. This is the measure of society. Do not allow it to impose itself on your sense of self-worth as an artist. The true value of your work is in its purpose. The purpose of your work is to plant seeds that have potential for meaningful fruit, celebrate truth and love, wonder at the magic of existence, and connect deeper. This is your worth and purpose. Keep your guru close, have patience, be persistent, keep faith. It will all eventually come together, and you'll look back and smile. And then love your soul, I believe in you. So I had to write that to myself. And then every time I've been in like bad places, I'm like, I believe in you, Bali. But that really helped me.
I think I need to write one of these letters. That is so beautiful. And again, it keeps coming back to your faith and spirituality, which is such a big theme of your work. And I mentioned in the bio that these turban men have like long flowy beards, and this illustration, for example, you've got more like this where there's musicians in nature in this enchanted woodland. And again, it's the visual language of children. This is when we think about non-spiritual books that we all grew up reading and children still grow up reading. Children are attracted to color, and that's how they learn first and foremost. And when you've got black and white Soba saying bedtime stories, it doesn't quite cut it. And I mean, for us, it worked because we didn't have anything else to compare it to. And our world is very different, which leads me on to our next question. I'm just conscious of time, so this might be the last one before we ask if anyone else has any questions, and I'll turn the comments on. But if we think about this day and age, you mentioned you read that story to your nieces, bedtime stories for Guru Nanak, and they didn't engage with it because pictorially it wasn't engaging. What challenges do you face as an illustrator, or do you think other illustrators face in terms of portraying faith and spirituality for a new audience, considering that although children are very wise, much more confident, their attention span is a lot less than what we had. They've got technological distractions. So how do you stay relevant and sort of in tune with your inner child to get that message across?
It's a good question. I feel like, I think we'll always have distractions, and distractions have always been around. I don't know, the question of staying relevant, I'm not sure if that's important. It sounds really, I don't know if that should be the focus of trying to stay relevant. But I mean, I can only speak from the perspective of children's picture books because I feel like that's my specialty. But if we just talk about that as as the platform, as the vessel it is, it's something that is there to help connect cross-culturally and cross generations and cross languages as well. So like a kid might have an iPad and they might be watching something and doing other things like that. But if a parent and a child, or any guardian or grandparent, was to sit with the child, they immediately you have to make time for those things first. Like you're making time for a connection, you're slowing down, and then you're connecting together to something, right? And there was this one video that someone had sent me actually, which is really cute, and she's only like a 2-year-old, and she can't read she was reading Guru Nanak Magnificent. She couldn't read it, but she was going through the pages and she was like, Guru Nanak, and then she's making up her own words. She was like, but it was just, like storytelling has always been around, and I know we've come from a strong oral tradition, and we've got things like graffiti and music, but it's just finding ways to, well, what do we have in the diaspora now? And one of them is children's books, or even animation and things like that. And how do we utilize the tools that we have around us to, connect in a way that we need to connect? So
I think you do that so brilliantly with children's books. This is something, like you said, we come from an oral tradition. Children's books didn't really exist in our parents' time. They had stories and they had to use their imagination for these stories. But what you've done with this with this pursuit of yours in children's illustration books is marry that world of the oral tradition of storytelling with pictures, which is something that is what we are accustomed to growing up in this world. You know, our parents didn't have that, and we have that luxury of being exposed to illustrations. And I think you've done such a good job of marrying those two worlds, and that's what makes this South Asian diaspora unique in terms of storytelling, you know, this merging of the two worlds.
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges we'll always have as a diaspora is the fact that we have there's so much is lost between migration and language and generations.
Yeah.
You know, like my own nieces can't, you know, they can't have a conversation with my mum in the same way, like because of just the gaps and the differences in culture and stuff. But when you have something visual, that always transcends those types of barriers, you know, and then it'll be interpreted in different ways, but it's something that heals and it builds bridges. So it's important to have that.
I'm just conscious of time. One more question, or rather comment or statement from me. What I like the most about your work, something that really stands out, is your illustrations of documenting the elderly, which I really, really love. I mentioned that in the bio earlier, that, you know, the story of Bibi, you know, and how you shine the spotlight on these invisible figures who are marginalized, you know, from society. We often forget about them, and I love how you depict them, because I don't have grandparents of my own. And is this something conscious that you do, or just, you know, are you simply observing your surroundings when you go to the Gurdwara and you're just documenting what you see, or are you consciously trying to preserve them, immortalize them through your pictures?
I think it's probably a bit of both. Definitely if I'm in an environment, I will most likely be drawn to the elderly person than a different character. I just have a natural inclination towards that. I find him more interesting. But yeah, there's definitely a part of it is documenting, because, you know, they are a generation that they're the golden generation, really. They've come here and they've survived and they've been through such a struggle.
So much.
It's through so much, and they're so resilient, and a lot of the time, because, you know, the younger generation has kind of moved on in some ways, busy with their lives, and they're kind of invisible, and a lot of the time they're ignored. And so to be able to do that through kind of documenting, through just seeing what's around you, I feel like we live in Wolverhampton, and we have a huge Punjabi and Sikh population here. But I'm always saying to Hari, sometimes I feel like in maybe 10-20 years time, I might not see someone walking down Dudley Road in a kurta pajama or a Punjabi suit. Like, I feel like that's something we have now, and it's
with their trainers.
It feels like it's the last of it, so it does feel important. Yeah.
I'm sure, like, I speak on behalf of everyone, that those illustrations are the most endearing, and so glad that you document that. And like I said, when I look at that, I feel like I'm seeing my grandparents, and I like to make believe with that's how my grandparents would have been, which is I think if you have grandparents, you're so blessed, you know, if they're alive. They are walking, talking museums, aren't they? They have so much, and sometimes you have to pry it out of them because they've become hardened over time. But if you sit with them, take that time out, my God, they have a wealth of knowledge to share. And that's disappearing, sadly, and I'm glad that you are immortalizing them through your pictures. So thank you for that, Bali. Like I said, conscious of time, and I want to check if anyone has any questions. So I'm going to turn on the commenting. If they don't, then we'll continue the discussion until 9 p.m. So if anyone has any questions now, you can share, put them in the comment section, and we'll just wait for any questions.
I'll share some drawings while then. From our last module was observation, so we're just drawing people from observation. So this is just sitting at the Gurdwara, but watching him, like I was sitting right in front of him while I was painting and drawing this. I think maybe that's one of the other reasons I do the elderly, is because they rarely notice me, or if they do notice me, they're very grateful. I think they feel like, wow, someone noticed me. Or if they don't.
Yeah, they do feel like that, because they're invisible, aren't they, otherwise? I think your husband has a question here. Did you steal his bottle of squash or something?
Yes, I did.
How important is the daily practice of drawing?
So important. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's not pushed enough within our community at the moment. I don't see it enough. I mean, amongst my peers, with the master's program, we're always encouraged drawing every day, and it's, you know, you invest in yourself every single day, because you're going to be, people are going to be investing in you, and also you're trying to, you know, you're trying to make something worthwhile enough to be in someone's hands one day, and for that you need to be investing in yourself every day. But yeah, drawing is really important, and I wish that it was pushed more. I think it's, you know, like if you're learning a musical instrument, you would practice it every day, wouldn't you? So if you're learning,
the word we use is sadhana. Sadhana is your daily practice, and you have to do that. You have to keep refining yourself, you know, in order not to achieve perfection. That doesn't exist, but to just be performing at your optimum level. Sadhana is a must in any artistic medium. 2 questions here, Vali. Who inspires you? That someone who loves your work. Who inspires you? Do you do custom portraits? And how you got into watercolor, particular in terms of a medium, and how does it convey your narrative? Can you see those questions as well there?
Yeah, who inspires you? That's a tricky one. I think just everything and everyone. I think you always try and just like soak in whatever you can. So I can't say anything too specific. How do you get into watercolor? I didn't think it was a conscious decision to get into watercolor. I think when I started my art and design foundation, which was like 10 years ago, I just experimented with every medium I wanted to, and I just kind of played around with things. How does it convey your narrative? I'm not sure. I don't do as much watercolor anymore, actually. So I don't know how to answer that. Sorry.
That's fine. We've got here, do you show your drawings to the elders you draw, and what have they said about it?
Sometimes, yeah.
You must love it, right?
I try not to because I want them to just feel natural and feel okay. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And a lot of the time I'll try my best for them not to figure out that I'm drawing them. I'll look away and but when they do, they're always quite like, oh, but
yeah.
They're like that.
They love it. They must love you. What else have we got here? Do you do custom portraits?
Not so much, no. At the moment I'm focused on children's picture books. So very rarely, not really.
And a question here from Rupi, who's joining us from America. Thank you, Rupi. How do you respond to the constant social, political upheavals in our world? Is your response creative or numbness?
Oof, what a lovely question. I'd say initially, for many years, I'm probably so accustomed to being in my own bubble and feeling safe in that, and feeling safe in my own ignorance. But I think in the past year or so, I'm trying to make more of a conscious effort to read more and reflect more, and try and, I guess, do my part in what I can. But I feel like it's always, I've always come from that very naive idea of any transformation or any kind of difference you want to make is always going to come from the difference and the transformation you have with yourself. So I think that's always been like, okay, I just have to try and be the best version of myself so that I can make an impact in some way. But yeah, the focus has always been on me. So I guess it's been very selfish, but I am trying to make some changes to that.
Thanks for your honesty. Your husband shared a fun fact here about you. Sometimes Bali painted her foot blue to make the footprints. Her foot was blue for the rest of the week. Is that's true? I'm assuming.
That's a
Your husband is sharing it.
No.
That's so interesting. Another question here. It's 8:54 on my clock. What is your biggest inspiration and motivation? I don't know if that means artistically, but yeah, what is your biggest inspiration and motivation?
I think death is. I think that's probably the only response I can get, is that the one day I'm not going to be here, and I feel like I feel very grateful that I am breathing right now. And after experiencing a very close death when I was a teenager, after that I think my view shifted quite a lot, and it felt like, okay, I have to do something really worthwhile with my time here. And I forget that a lot of the time as well, but that's always the motivator in the back of my mind, that I have to do something worthwhile. So
I think we all forget that as well. And what I like, one of my favorite Barneys is by Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. I love, if you can say you have a favorite, I love his Barney because it is always reminding us of the impermanence of life. His themes explore the impermanence of life, temporary nature, and I love it because it's very mocking in nature. And I think you address a very morbid theme of death with such sensitivity and charm. One of the images you did recently was about death, and there's a little I can't remember it now, but there's a little person with like a star or a light. You're talking about death in that one. And death is, how do you introduce death to children? It's not an easy topic, but like I said, I think you do that with such sensibility. You make it enchanting, not something that is melancholy or something to be afraid of. It's a hard thing to do, and I think you do a great job of that, to be honest with you. Let's see what other questions we've got here. Did you always want to be an artist?
No.
4 more minutes.
No, I didn't. I don't think I did. I mean, at college, I had actually picked, I thought I would go into medicine, and I picked things. I actually picked an array of things. I picked English, philosophy, chemistry, physics. I wanted to try and do everything. But I thought I would just go into medicine. But then I didn't. But I'd always been creating and making and doing things throughout most of my life.
But I would say that you're healing us with your art. So you're the doctor of art there.
I don't think I would have been good at medicine because I have a terrible memory. So I wouldn't have
another actually really interesting question from your husband. If you were stuck on an island and could only have one medium to draw with, what would it be?
That's a tricky one because I would say pencil, but then what if I didn't have a pencil sharpener or the pencil runner?
Yeah.
I think I would a sharp object in some way, some kind of sharp object, so I could etch into things that are naturally around me, like the trees or the sand, or I don't know, some rocks. I could etch into rocks. Sharp object.
Yeah, you could. What is your favorite children's book from your childhood? I think we answered that at the beginning. Was it the frog one you said?
Fast Frog, yeah.
Fast Frog.
Yeah.
Fast Frog. I don't know if it's available now. Is there? Hang on, just a bit. Is there any piece of art in mind which you aspire to create? One which you haven't created already?
I think it's mostly children's books, and there's loads of ideas that I have and that I want to do, but I don't think I can share them out loud. So, but there's lots.
That's fine.
So much.
What I will do now. I'm just going to introduce. We have another question here. In the books where you are writing the words, how do you work the sentences out for the illustrations? Is the process ever reversed? If you can do that in 30 seconds, Vali, because then I want to talk about Saffron Press before it times us out.
Okay, I would say that it goes both ways. Pictures and text work together, and it's almost like a musical composition. You know, you're working two things out side by side, and sometimes you have a text and the words don't match, so you take a bit of the text away, or something changes and you need to add visuals, so it goes side by side. Yeah.
Less than 30 seconds, that was great. And Saffron Press, you mentioned at the beginning that you have a new book coming out which explores body image through, it's called, remind me the name of the book.
Gamal's
Gamal's, exactly. And it's about, body image and hair, which is something I'm sure we all struggled with as children. Do you have, you don't have the cover to hand or anything, do you?
No, we don't have the cover yet, but I can share what it was originally inspired by. It was actually this zine that I did in 2013, and
I remember that.
Ignore the cover, but it was actually, yeah, do you remember that? So it was inspired by Rupi Kaur's spoken word, and actually a video that Kiran Kaur did. It was heavily inspired by that, and at the time I'd illustrated the most of the, I think it was the whole poem. And these are some of the originals from that. But I knew that after I did that, I really wanted a way to do that in a picture book format that was more digestible and processable for a younger audience. So it came from that, and that's interesting. That was like conceptualized in well, it wasn't my concept because it was inspired, but from 2013 onwards, and it's come a long way since. So I feel really blessed to be working on it with Saffron Press, because Navjot, she's very, very supportive of, you know, telling your own truth, what your truth is, and being authentic to your voice. So that's really great. Yeah.
I think what I'll share that after this live. We're going to end it here because I'm really conscious of we have 30 seconds remaining. So thank you, Baljinder. We are so honoured that you took the time out to share, you know, your fantastical and whimsical world of spirituality. I will share this to my IGTV to join later. But huge honour, and you know, we will continue to support you, and thank you for all that you do. The Doctor of Art, healing through your art. We value you and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.